Hello everyone. Today we are going to take this paper into discussion. As you can see, it has about 25 MCQs from chapter 2 and 3. So we'll start now. The first question, butter and bread are considered as complementary to each other in many consumption activities. Therefore, if the price of bread rises, we would expect, right? Normally, when price of bread rises, increases, what would happen to quantity demanded of bread? We know quantity demanded of bread would drop, right? That's basic demand law. But here in the answers, there's nothing about bread. All the answers are talking about what's going to happen to demand of butter. So we'll think of when price of bread goes up, what would happen to the amount people buy of butter? What would happen? Simply, as stated in the question, butter and bread are complementaries to each other. They are both used together. If the price rise of bread, if it leads to a quantity demanded drop in bread itself, butter is used with bread. So when people buy less of bread, that means they'll buy less of butter also. So what's happening here? Whenever price of bread goes up, demand of butter would decrease. The answer is the second one. Some of you might have thought that the answer is the third one, which talks about quantity demand of butter dropping. Now, this difference is what you need to know to get the answer right for this particular question, right? Remember this one thing. For a product to see a change in quantity demanded, that particular product's price should change. That means for the quantity demanded of butter to decrease, what should happen is price of butter itself should have gone up. If price of butter itself went up, then as a result, quantity demanded of butter would have dropped, right? So if they have said in the question, the price of butter rose, then the answer would have been quantity demanded for butter would have decreased. But here, what did they say? Price of bread has increased. That means from the point of butter's demand, price of bread is a related product's price, complementary product's price. So when anything other than price of butter is changing and that's causing the amount of butter that is bought, we would call it change in demand. So in this case, that's why this decrease in the amount of butter bought is called decrease in demand of butter. And that's answer number 2 for this question. That's why answer is the second one for this question. And still, if you have any doubts about these changes in quantity demanded, changes in demand, changes in supply, changes in quantity supply, like I've already said in previous videos, there's a seminar I have done and the video is up on YouTube itself. You can search for it and get it in my YouTube channel. Okay, so that's it. Second question, simply here, it's a PED question. They are saying when the price of mango is 40, the quantity demanded is 1000. Price of mangoes changes to 50 rupees, which leads to quantity demanded to change to 900 mangoes. What will be the price elasticity of demand? If I just draw a demand schedule, it will look something like this. Price, quantity demanded. Price at first is 40. At that time, demand is 1000. Then price goes to 50. At that time, demand comes down to 900. And they are asking you to just measure the PED. Now, remember one thing. In these situations, when they give like, okay, price is changing from one to another, As a result, demand is also changing. And they ask you to find the PED. You have to decide whether you are going with point PED or arc PED, right? Point or arc. Now, how do you decide that? To make that decision to go with point or arc, you have to see whether the price change that happens here is a significant price change or an insignificant, very small price change. So how do you decide that? So you are going from 40 to 50. No? So that's a 10 rupee price change and the original price is 40. That means if you look at percentage wise, the percentage change in prices, a 25% change. Now, generally, this is how it works. If the percentage change in price is around 20-25%, I'd recommend you go with point method. Anything above that, like 30%, 35, 40, 50, 70, 100%. Anything above this 20-25 range, I would recommend you to go with the arc method. Okay, so in this case, since it's at 25% only, I'm going with the point method. In that case, it will look something like this. Change in quantity demanded over change in price into the original initial price over the initial quantity demanded. Or else you can directly go and use this percentage equation, percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change in price. That will also get you the same answer. Whichever method you prefer or whichever method is easier for you, you can use that. Now, change in quantity demanded happens to be, as you can see, from 1000, we are coming down to 900. So it's a minus 100 units drop in demand when price goes up by 10 rupees into the original price is 40 divided by the original quantity demanded happens to be at 40 rupees. What's the quantity demanded? 1000. So that's the original quantity demanded. Then this 0 will be cut by this. So there are 2 zeros here. So let's say these 2 zeros are cutting those two. You'll be left with a minus 4 divided by 10. Minus 4 divided by 10. That means your answer will be minus 0.4. And that's answer number 2. Right? So that's how you do this particular question. With that, we'll move on to the next one. Right. We'll move on to the next question now. And as you can see, the next one is about, okay, again, we are dealing with the supply curve. Okay, so which of the following will cause the supply curve for a good to shift to the left? Simple. So supply curve is shifting to the left. So what will it look like? Let me draw it and show. So here's the supply curve that you can roughly draw. Price, 0, quantity supplied. Here's the supply curve. And they are saying this supply curve is shifting to the left. Know which side is left, okay? This is the left side. Some people, might think from the curve's point of view and decide to shift it to the other side. No, left means when you look at the graph, when you look at the curve, it's shifting to the left, right? So this is the left side. So the curve is shifting to the left. Okay, this is your new supply curve. And what could have possibly caused this? Remember, if a supply curve is shifting to the left, let's say initially this was the price of the product at that time, a certain quantity was supplied. So let's say when the price was 20, earlier around 50 units were supplied, right? At 20 rupee price point earlier, 50 units supplied. Now, as you can see, after the curve shifts, at that same 20 rupee price, if you go to the new supply curve now, what has happened? A lesser quantity is supplied. Let's say that is 20. So now when the price remained the same, at the same price, the producer is supplying less units, right? At the same price. Price has seen no change, but the producer is supplying less. That means it is supposed to be called a decrease in production. A decrease in supply, not a decrease in quantity supplied. Or a decrease in quantity supplied is also called as contraction in supply. So that's not the case here. Here, there is a decrease in supply. You have to go and look for what could have caused this out of the 5 answers given. What could have caused this decrease in quantity supplied? As the price has not changed, here you see that. So the first 2 answers are out, because for the curve to shift to the left, price can't change. If there's a change in the price, that would be called a change in quantity supplied. For that, we know there will be a movement along the supply curve. There will be a movement along the supply curve. The curve will not shift. Here, the curve itself is shifting. So you are supposed to go with, actually, you are supposed to go without the first 2 answers. So we look at the third one, a decrease in cost of production. Now, a decrease in cost of production would have meant what? Producer would have started to earn a little bit more profit because of the drop in the price. Then they would have increased the supply, not decrease. So third answer is also out. Fourth answer is about an increase in the cost of production. Now, that is a valid reason for the supply curve to shift to the left. When the cost of production goes up, producers would reduce how much they are supplying. Why? Because of the cost of production has gone up. That means the profits are now down. So the producers will supply less. The supply curve would shift to the left in that scenario. So the answer is the fourth one, but we'll look at the fifth one also. An expectation of a future price decline. If there is an expectation of the price going down in the future, then what would happen is the producer would be like, okay, next week the price is going to drop. So today itself, I want to sell as much as possible. Whatever they have stored, they will bring everything to the market and try to sell them off. So if there's an expectation of a future price decline, today at present, the supply would increase. But here we are talking about a supply decrease. That means we have to go with answer number 4, an increase in cost of production. That is the answer for this question. Hope you guys understood that also. And with that, we'll move to the fourth question. Which of the following will cause the demand curve for a good to shift to the right? Again, a similar question to what we did earlier, only here we are talking about demand, not supply anymore. So if I just roughly draw it quickly, price 0, quantity demanded, and you have the demand curve that goes like this, and then it shifts to the right. My bad. So it should shift this side now. That's the rightward shift. Curve is shifting to the right. So the orange one is our initial demand curve. The red one is the new one after the rightward shift. Let's call it D1. Now, what could cause this? So here, as you can see, the price remains the same, right? The price remains the same, but the amount that is demanded has increased. The price remains the same still. When the price was here, at that price, when the demand curve was the orange, old demand curve, demand was at this point, let's say that is 100. At 20 rupees, demand was 100. When the demand curve was the orange, old demand curve. But after the demand curve shifting to the right, you can see for the same 20 rupee price, customers are demanding more now. For the same price, customers are demanding more. Let's say that's about 200 units. So for the same price, customers are demanding more. That means it would be called an increase in demand. So an increase in demand is what's shown by a shift in the demand curve to the right side. So you have to pick the answer, the reason for this increase in demand. So as you can see, the price is still the same. Any answer that talks about the present price of the product going up or coming down is out. Right? That is simply out. So the first answer talks about an increase in the price of the goods. No, an increase in the price of the goods would have caused what? A decrease in quantity demanded, a contraction in demand. That could have caused, for example, if the price has gone up from 20 to, let's say, 25, that would have meant we would have gone up the old orange demand curve itself. Price went up. As a result, quantity demanded dropped. But here that didn't happen. Price did not change at all. So the first answer is out. A decrease in the number of buyers in the market. If the population in the market, if the amount of people in the market comes down, that would mean the demand for the product would have dropped. Here, the demand is increasing. So second answer is also out. First is out, second is out. Third, an expectation of a future price decline. Think of it. Today, you get to know next week the price of the product is dropping. Then will you go and buy that product today, or will you wait till next week to go and buy it? Obviously, you'll be like, why should I buy it today? Because if I wait a week, I will get to buy the product at a lower price. So today demand would drop then. So that's not the answer. Fourth one, an expectation of a future price increase. Okay, today suddenly you get a news. Next week, the prices of smartphones are going to go up. If you are already thinking of buying a phone, then what will you do? Will you suddenly go out today and buy it, or will you wait till 1 week to buy at a higher price? Those who are in the idea of buying a smartphone will rush to the shops and buy it today. Why? Because next week they'll have to pay a higher price. So an expected future price increase would always increase demand at present, right? So that's the answer for this question. Fifth one, a decrease in consumer income. If consumers are earning less, then what will happen? Obviously, demand would drop. For a normal product, demand would drop. But here the demand is increasing. So the answer is the fourth one. Hope you guys understood that. With that, we'll move to the fifth question now. Right. The fifth one is about which of the following will cause the individual demand for a good to increase. Now, when you started chapter 2, you might have come across these two types of demand where you have individual demand, which talks about one single person's demand for a product. Whenever, let's say at various prices, various quantities, one consumer is willing and able to buy. Now that's called individual demand. Whereas the other one is market demand, which is about the sum of all individual demands in the market. That means if there are 5 people in the market, then we take at various prices what quantities each of those, right, individuals would buy, the various quantities each of those individuals would buy at different prices. You take the whole lot and add them. You get the sum, right? Rather than looking at one person demand individually, you look at the sum of all individual demands. That is market demand. So here, the question is, what could cause individual demand for a good to increase? Now, the first two answers are talking about clearly the number of buyers in the market going up and coming down. So that's not related to individual demand. That's directly market demand. Right. An increase in consumer income. Okay, if one person's income decreases, and a decrease in consumer income, right? If one person's income drops, they would buy less, right? Then individual demand would decrease, not increase. So third answer is also out. A decrease in price of complementary good. So let's say you like to drink tea. Okay, price of tea is going up. That means quantity demanded for tea, what will happen? Will drop. Now we'll take a complementary product for tea, which is sugar. So imagine when price of tea goes up, we buy less of tea and sugar is used with tea, what will happen to sugar demand? Sugar demand will drop, right? Sugar demand will drop. So when price of tea goes up, quantity demanded of tea drops. At that time, quantity demanded of sugar also drops. But here they are saying a decrease in the price of complementary. No. So for sugar, tea is a complementary product. And when this complementary product's price goes up, what's happening? Sugar demand drops. So here in the answer, they are suggesting a decrease in the price of complementary. So we'll go the other way now. Assuming price of tea is dropping, that means people will buy more tea and sugar is consumed with tea. So sugar demand will also go up. So thinking of sugar as the good, as this particular good of which we are talking the individual demand about, but we are talking of about the individual demand of sugar. Let's take it that way. If that's the case, tea's price, which is the complementary good, if tea's price decreases, what will happen? Sugar demand would increase. So the answer for this one is the fourth one. Hope you guys got that. Okay. Hope that's clear. And then we move on to the sixth question. With a downward sloping market demand curve, right? With a downward sloping market demand curve and an upward sloping market supply curve. That means the normal situation. That's what we normally get now. So we have price, zero, quantity. Demand curve is, according to the question, is downward sloping. That means it's a normal good pretty much, right? You can assume it to be a normal good. And the supply curve is upward sloping. Okay. And a setback in technology what will that setback in technology do to equilibrium is the question. I think here UM is missing. Right. So first we'll mark for this question, for these types of question where they are asking you whenever demand or supply changes or whenever both of them change, what will happen to the market equilibrium, how it will change. For that, you have to first find out originally what's the market equilibrium. So here that is. So roughly you have to draw a graph like this and then mark, okay, this is the equilibrium at first before the change in technology. So let's say this is price and this is the first quantity. Let's, for example, put 20 rupees for the equilibrium price, and for the equilibrium quantity, we'll put 100 just for, just to make things a little bit simpler. Then they are saying there has been a setback in technology. That means technology setting back would affect supply or demand. You have to first think of that. Out of the determinants of demand, we don't have anything related to technology. But out of the supply determinants, you have price of the particular good, price of related goods, government policies, right? Future expectation of price, number of sellers in the market, cost of production, that is the cost of input, price of inputs. Along with that, you have technology also as a factor that will affect supply. In this case, they are saying supply is, there's a setback in technology. Technology is kind of, it's not improving, it's the opposite. There's a setback in technology. That means whatever the technology the producer had earlier, it's not there anymore. What will happen as a result? Will it cause the supply to increase or decrease? Obviously, a setback in technology will lead to a decrease in supply, a decline in supply, a left side shift of the supply curve due to the setback in technology. When that happens, as you can see, you have a new equilibrium now. Demand curve doesn't shift because there's nothing that has changed, which causes a shift in the demand curve. But supply curve shifts left because of the setback in technology. As a result, you see the price of the product has increased, but the quantity has decreased. So you have to find that answer. First one is about increase in equilibrium price and quantity. So that's out. They are saying both are increasing. Answer says what we found out says otherwise. So second is also out. Third is also out. Fourth is also out because it says decrease in price. Actually, we found out that there's an increase in price. Increase in equilibrium price, decrease in equilibrium quantity. That's the answer for this question. Hope you guys understood that also. And then we move to the next question. Right. The seventh question is about, again, as you can see, the demand equation of a particular good is as follows. Demand equation is QD equals 270 minus 5P. So that's here. And what's the value of the coefficient of PED of the good when the price is ₹6? Okay, now again, we are trying to find price elasticity of demand. And again, we are presented with this decision that we should make. Should we use the arc equation or the point equation? And the answer for this question is very simple. What is point price elasticity of demand? Point price elasticity of demand simply means you are measuring the PED at a particular price point. At that point of price, at that price point, what's the PED? That is what the whole concept of point price elasticity of demand is about. Arc means within a price range. That means within two price range, within a range of two prices, what's the PED? That is arc elasticity of demand. So here we are measuring what? At ₹6, what is the PED? That means we should be using the point equation, right? So the equation normally for point one, we use this change in QD, delta QD over delta price, change in price, into we take the original price or at that particular point, whatever the price is, divided by at that price point, whatever the quantity demanded is. We use that. But in here, there's a shorter way to get to the PED. That is, since the demand equation is given to us directly, and we know at what price we are supposed to find the PED, that is 6. And at ₹6, we can find out what's the demand is. QD equals 270 minus 5 into 6. So 270 minus 5 into 6 is how much? That's 30. That means 270 minus 30, the quantity demanded at ₹6 is 240 units. 240 units. So now we know, okay, the price is supposed to be 6 and the quantity demanded is supposed to be 240. For the change in QD over change in price, instead of this one, we can use the slope of the demand curve. The slope of the demand curve, because the equation we generally use for the slope of the demand curve is what? Change in QD over change in price. And in A level, we know the slope is linear, right? That means the slope doesn't change. The demand curves we have are linear. That means the slope never changes at any point on the demand curve. That's why we have always straight line demand curves. So all you have to do is take the slope's value and put it in place of B. In the equation itself, it's given in the demand equation, slope is this minus -5. So you take that -5 into the first, actually the price at which we are trying to measure PED is ₹6 over, at ₹6, the quantity demanded is 240. So if I simplify the whole thing now, I'll get something like, okay, so, okay, 624. So that's going to be 1. Here it's going to be, yeah, 40. And then I'm left with minus 5 over 40. So 5 divided by 40 would be minus 1 over 8. Minus 1 over 8 is minus 0.125. So the answer is the third one. For this question, the answer is the third one. Now, for this slope part, I put B and took the minus 5. No, if you don't know that, if you don't remember that such an equation exists, then you can still go with this equation also. For that, what you have to do is, you'll have to create a demand schedule now, right? Which you can use it like this. Okay, price, quantity demanded at 6 rupees in the question itself. 6 is given, no, so you put 6 rupees and you found out at 6 rupees, 240 is the quantity demanded. Then put another price. Let's put 10 rupees. So if I put 10 rupees in place of 6, what will I get? 270 minus 5 into 10 is 50. 270 minus 50. That means I'll end up with 220, right? 220. So here my price is increasing by 4. So if I use this change in QD over change in price equation, I'll end up with price increase is, change in price is 4. Change in quantity demanded is minus 20. Then you see I end up with the same minus 5. So that is what I just directly took from the demand equation and put it here. So you can do that also. That will save you a lot of time. So that's the answer for this question, minus 0.125. Hope you guys understood that. Next question is about, they are saying a supplier expects to increase the revenue by decreasing the price of his product by 10%. If this objective is to be achieved, okay. And the answers all are about price elasticity of demand, what it is, or price elasticity of supply, and what that coefficient is. What type of PED or PES would cause the producers' revenue to increase by them decreasing the price of the product by 10%. Remember this one thing. In your A-level syllabus, in chapter 2, when you are studying PED, you might have come across this. Based on the types of PED, right, a price change can lead to, or a price change can affect producers' revenue in a certain way. So this you learn under PED, not PES. So PES answers are anyway out. So it's about PED now. So the first 3 answers are the possible answers. And you have to remember this. There's an extensive way of understanding it. You might have learned this in your theory classes. But here I will just put a shortcut method. Remember, if the PED coefficient is less than 1, right? If the PED coefficient is less than 1, right? It includes 0 also. That means here we are talking about less than 1 means we are talking about inelastic demand, right? Inelastic demand. And if the PED is 0, now we call it perfectly inelastic. No. What that means is whenever the producer changes their price, right? Whenever the producer changes their price, the demand is not that much sensitive to the price change. That's what inelastic demand is. Demand is very much not so, how to put it, sensitive to the price change. That's what inelastic demand means. So when the PED value is less than 1, that means the demand is inelastic. And if it's 0, that means it's perfectly inelastic. If that's the case, the producer, let's say, for example, the producer is selling salt or sugar, which always have inelastic demand, less than 1 PED coefficient. In such situations, The producer, if they want to earn more money, if they want to increase their revenue, what they need to do is simply increase the price of the product. Because the salt and all, they are essentials, no? They have inelastic demand. So even when the price goes up by 50%, demand doesn't drop by much. So what will happen? Ultimately, people will be spending more for sugar, for flour, pan piti, for rice, all those products. Recently also, price went up for petrol. Prices went up in a huge way, but demand has not dropped as much. What that means is people will be spending more money now, and producers will be earning more money now by increasing the price. So remember, if the PED is in any way inelastic, it's either it's relatively inelastic or perfectly inelastic, producers will be earning more money by increasing the price. So price and producer revenue, in that case, will have a positive relationship. A positive relationship. If the producer decreases their price, what will happen? Producer revenue will come down. So positive relationship between price and producer revenue if the PED is less than 1 or 0. If the PED is, for example, equal to 1, unitary elastic, then that is unitary elastic. If that's the case, what will happen is price change, whether it's increase or decrease, will cause no change in producer revenue. No change in producer revenue. So a producer who has unitary elastic demand cannot change their revenue by increasing their price or decreasing their price. If PED is greater than 1, like 3.3, 2.2, minus 1, minus 3.3, minus 2.2, minus 1.8, the coefficient is greater than 1, or if it is perfectly elastic, that is infinity. So this is relatively elastic, and this is perfectly elastic. So in any way, if supply demand is perfectly elastic or relatively elastic, in such situations, you will see if the producer is increasing their price, their revenue would drop quickly. Why? For elastic demand, an increase in the price, demand would be affected in a huge way. That's what elastic demand is. Demand is very price sensitive, like for pizzas and all. For pizzas and all, if the price goes up even a little bit, demand would drop in a huge way because they are not essential goods. They are not luxury goods. They are luxury goods. They are not essential goods. So for them, when price goes up, even in a little way, consumers would drop buying them in a huge way. Demand would be affected in a very big way. So what will happen? Producer revenue would drop. For those products, if they put a discount, if the price comes down, everyone who even might not have thought of buying it earlier will now go and buy it. That's why for Don't Cook Tuesdays, when Pizza Hut gives buy one get one offers, always there will be huge queues, because for those products, when price comes down, demand would go up in a very, very huge way. As a result, producers would earn more money. So in that case, you see price and producer revenue for elastic demand and perfectly elastic demanded products is negative, right? So in this case, they are saying for the producer to earn more revenue by decreasing their price by 10%. Which of these three answers, which of these situations of price elasticity of demand would result in that objective being achieved? So if the price is decreased, we know if the product has elastic demand, if the price comes down, right, this one, if the price comes down, you see producer revenue would come down. So that's not the answer. For PED unitary elastic, if the price comes down, producer revenue doesn't change. So that's also not the answer. But you see the PED elastic one, if the price comes down, producers earn more revenue. So that is the answer. Price elasticity of demand should be greater than 1. That's the answer for this question. Hope you guys understood that. If you still have some doubts, you can just write this down, whatever I have shown on the screen, as like short notes or something somewhere. But to properly understand it, go back to your handout, go study PED types, all 5 types. So with that, we'll move on to the next question. Again, it's related to the same thing. So I think let me keep those. Yeah, let me keep this, whatever I wrote about producer, PED types and producer revenues and price relationship. I'll keep it like that. And assume a goods price elasticity of demand. Assume a product's price elasticity of demand is relatively inelastic. If the price of one good increases, if the price of the good increases, okay, what will happen to producer revenue and consumer expenditure is the question. You need to remember one thing. Producer revenue, in most cases, is directly equal to consumer's expenditure, right? So if the producer is selling the product for a certain price, that is 5 rupees, and he's selling a certain quantity, let's say that is 20 units, what's the producer's revenue now? 5 into 20, 100 rupees, right? That is producer's revenue. At the same time, from consumer side, look, consumer is paying 5 rupees. How many quantities consumer is buying? 20 units. So consumer's expenditure is producer's revenue, right? So for this question, it's simple. Whatever happens to producer revenue, the same thing will happen to consumer expenditure. And they are saying price elasticity of demand is relatively inelastic. So we are looking at this part. The positive relationship between price and producer revenue, consumer expenditure part. If the price of the good increases, okay, so we are specifically now looking at this red one. Price of the good increases. We know what will happen. Producer revenue would increase, so will consumer expenditure also, right? So producer revenue will increase, consumer expenditure will also increase. So if you look at the answers now, what will be the answer for this particular question? For question 9, answer here is, as you can see, producer revenue and consumer revenue both will increase. That's the answer for this question. That's the answer for this question. Right? Hope you guys got that. Moving on to the next question now. The cross price elasticity of demand measures what? So for this, you don't even have to look at the answers in your head. First of all, think of, okay, what does cross price elasticity of demand measures? It measures whenever there's a related product's price change, how will a particular product's demand respond to it? For example, if we take tea as the product for which demand we are looking at, tea is the product, and we are looking at demand of tea now, right? And whenever we see, okay, price of tea is changing, we see price of tea is changing. We assume price of tea is changing, and as a result, quantity demanded of tea is changing. Now, if we measure how quantity demanded of tea responded to a change in the price of tea, we call it price elasticity of demand. On the other hand, if income changes and that affects quantity demanded of tea, we say that income elasticity of demand. That effect, if we measure, it's income elasticity of demand. But cross price elasticity of demand is simply the same tea here, quantity demand of tea, we are saying it's changing now, but it can change when sugar price changes also, or coffee price changes also. So if we try to measure whenever coffee's price changes, how quantity demanded of tea responds to that, now that is called cross price elasticity of demand, right? That is called cross price elasticity of demand. Here, what are we measuring? The responsiveness of quantity demanded of one particular good for a change in related product's price, right? For a change in related products price. So you have to look for that. And in that case, the answer, I believe, is the third answer. Responsiveness of quantity demanded of a good to a change in price of another good. That is the equation, or that is the definition for cross price elasticity of demand. Whereas the second one, the responsiveness of quantity demanded to a relative change in price of a good, right? That is PED. The responsiveness of quantity demanded to a change in consumer income level. Now that is called income elasticity of demand. So the answer for this one is the third one. Hope you guys got that. Right. And then moving on to the next question. Right. Next question. Again, it's about that total revenue of producer changing with price elasticity of demand. And in this question, you see total revenue of firm will increase when? Okay. So again, if you take the same thing, okay, first we'll go it another way, then not the same way, but I will write the answer simply like this. Price rises and demand is elastic. Okay, they are saying price is going to rise and we want to find out total revenue of the firm is supposed to increase. So producer revenue has to increase, right? And the first answer is about price rising when demand is elastic. That means PED value is greater than 1. And we found out if the PED is greater than 1, producer revenue and price both actually have negative relationship, not positive, right? Negative relationship, not positive. That means if this is the case, price is rising when the PED is greater than 1, what would happen is producer revenue actually would drop, right? Producer revenue would actually drop. So the first answer is actually out here. That can't be the answer for this question. Then if you look at the second answer, same situation, the product PED is still the same type, greater than 1, elastic in nature. And they are saying price is dropping. When price drops for a product which has elastic demand, like pizzas and luxury goods, there's a discount, there's a drop in price. Demand would increase in a very huge way, leading the producer revenue to go up. And that's what we are trying to find out, right? Producer revenue should go up. So the answer for this question is actually the second one, right? When price drops, if the product is an elastic good, right? If the product has an elastic demand, then obviously that would cause the demand to increase. So the answer is the second one for this question. Simple. And if you have that relationship between producer revenue and price of a particular good based on the type of PED, based on type of PED. If you remember that relationship, that's enough. So remember, if the type of PED is in any way inelastic, either it's perfectly inelastic or relatively inelastic, right? Either way, you end up with these two products having a positive relationship. Sorry, these two, price and producer revenue having positive relationship, my bad. Then if it's unitary elastic, that means it's like no relationship at all. Price and producer revenue. So the price change will not do anything to producer revenue. An increase in price change will not affect producer revenue. A decrease in price also will not change producer revenue at all. So it's like no relationship between price and producer revenue. So let me put it like zero relationship, no relationship. If demand is elastic or perfectly elastic, what will happen? Price and producer revenue are negatively related. A price increase will cause producer revenue to drop. A price drop will cause producer revenue to increase. That's what happened here in this question. Remember this. That's enough. But remember, when I said 0, I meant no relationship between price and producer revenue. That's what I said. Question number 12. Let's have a look at that. So question number 12 is about, as you can see, the question goes like, a small country's domestic market demand curve equation is given here, right? Is QD 320 minus QD equals 320 minus 3P. Supply is given as minus 80 plus 2P. Assume that the sugar market is open to international trade and the world market price of sugar is ₹60. What is the quantity of sugar that are domestically supplied when the country is open for international trade? That is the question. Right. For this question, first of all, this is a kind of, it might be a new question for you. You might be doing this for the first time. And it goes like this. This is pretty much not that hard. You have done a similar question before when it comes to maximum price control. Here also something like that is going to happen. I'll explain now. So they are saying, okay, there is demand and the demand equation is given. Supply equation is also given. But they are saying there's international trade in this market, right? That means sugar is not just made domestically, it's being imported also, right? And the international price in the world market of sugar is ₹60 only, right? First of all, we have to do one thing. We'll find out in domestic market, right? In domestic market, for example, I'll just, actually for this question, you don't have to even do that, but for the sake of explaining how this question goes, I'll just take you through that process also. So quantity demanded equals quantity supplied. So in the domestic market, let's forget about the foreign market thing at all. If there's only the domestically produced sugar is there, what will happen to the equilibrium price and quantity? We'll have a look. 320 minus 3P equals minus 80 plus 2P. That's the situation now, okay? And we'll find the equilibrium price now. So 3P comes to this side, whereas the minus 80 comes to this side. So it's going to be 320 plus 80 equals 5P. So it's going to be 400 equals 5. You divide this side by 5, do the same on the other side. Equilibrium price now is how much? ₹80. And the equilibrium quantity is simple. We go to the demand equation. 320 minus 3 into 80. 320 minus 3 into 80. So 320 minus 3 into 80 is how much? That's going to be, I think, 240. So equilibrium quantity is going to be 80 units. Right? So that's the scenario now. ₹80 equilibrium price. And 80 units is the equilibrium quantity. That's the scenario right now. Hope you guys got that. Right? And then, right, since we got both to be the same, I'm just thinking whether everything is fine or not. You know, it can happen, but, you know, so again, if I go through 320 minus 3P equals minus 80 plus 2P. Okay. Then the 3P goes to the other side. So 5P here, 80 comes 400. 400 over 5 is my bad. I made a mistake here. No. So 400. Yeah, no, that's correct. 400 over 5 is 80. That's fine. And then 320 minus 3P. Okay. So just to confirm, we'll take the supply equation minus 80 plus 2 into 8. So minus 80 plus 160. So it's anyway, you know, answer is 80. So that's perfect. What I have done is correct. Then you know the equilibrium price is how much? 80. Equilibrium quantity is 80. So let me take this and put it in a rough graph just for your understanding to make this whole question easily understandable. So we'll write down the demand equation, the supply equation. Okay, cool. Supply curve and demand curve. Okay. And we have the equilibrium at what price? 80 rupee price and 80 units quantity. 80 rupees, 80 units. So quantity is in units and price is in rupees, right? Price is in rupees. Fine. Now we come to the main part. Here, the domestically produced sugar, the market equilibrium price is 80 rupees, right? But we are saying in this market, okay, this particular, let's say Sri Lanka. So in Sri Lanka, without the world sugar coming in, if it's just Sri Lankan produced sugar, the market equilibrium price is 80 rupees and the equilibrium quantity is 80 units based on demand and supply, domestic demand and domestic supply. That's what we have. But the thing is, we have the country is open to international trade now, and the world market price of sugar is only 60, right? What that means is we are importing sugar from world market also, and the world market sugar price is how much? Only 60 rupees. So domestic producers now, they can't sell above that 60 rupee price, because if they do, no one will buy their sugar, because the world market price, let's put it as world price. So the world price is 60 rupees. So who will buy sugar for 80 rupees? No one. Everyone will want to buy at 60 only, because 60 rupee worth of sugar is also available in the market, which is imported sugar. So because of this 60 rupee world price, domestic producers can't sell at 80 rupees. They will also have to sell at 60 rupees now. So this 80 rupee, 80 units thing is now out of the way because of this international market interference. As a result, in Sri Lanka now, 60 will be the price. And the question is, what are they asking? What is the quantity of sugar that are domestically supplied when the country is open to international trade? So if the country is open to international trade now, 60 rupees will be the market price, not 80. Why? Because the international supply of sugar is only at 60 rupees. So domestic producers now have to stick to supplying at 60 rupees. They can't charge more, no, so they'll have to also charge only 60. So they'll supply only this much. So 60 rupees meets the supply curve here. So that's the quantity producers will supply domestically. This is the quantity supplied by domestic market. Right? But the demand is way more. If you look at the demand now, 60 rupees, no. So demand is here. Demand is there. So the brown area is the domestic supply. The balance part, let me highlight it. This orange area is the imported sugar part. Okay, at 60 rupees, demand is way high. Demand is going up and supply is coming down. That's what's happening. Due to this international market intervention, price came down to 60. As a result, supply, domestic market supply came down, but the demand went up, right? Right. Okay, all good. Now the question is simply, what is the quantity of sugar that are domestically supplied? That's all. No. So all you have to do is take the supply equation, which is given as minus 80 plus 2p. That's the supply equation. And you have to just find out at 60 rupees, what is the supply? That's all you have to do to get the answer for this question. Everything else I just explained is just to make you understand, okay, this is what is happening. But for this question, if you read the question and be like, okay, this is the demand equation, this is the supply equation, and the international market is there, international trade is happening, and world price of sugar is 60. That means they're asking, what is the quantity domestically supplied in Sri Lanka? So how do you find out? Simple. You take the supply equation and You know at what price now the product has to be supplied at? The world market price, because the world market price is less than the market equilibrium price, right? If the market equilibrium price in the domestic market was less, then no need to worry. We could have sold at the domestic price itself. If the domestic equilibrium was at 40 rupees, then we didn't have to worry about the world market selling at 60, because we are selling at 40, so everyone will buy with us only at 40 rupees. No one will go and buy the international sugar because it's expensive. But here what happened, since we are supposed, our equilibrium price is 80, but due to this international market coming in, we are forced to sell at 60. So 60. Then what's the supply is supposed to be? Minus 80 plus 120. So supply at 60 rupees will be 40 units. 40 units. So answer is the first one, 40 units. Sometimes you can get a question like, what will be the imported quantity? What will be the imported quantity? For that, what you have to do is, you have to find out, okay, domestically supplied one is 40 units. That's the supply. What will be imported? That extra unit that is demanded. So you have to first find out what is the demand, right? You have to find out at 60 rupees, what is the demand? So it's going to be 320 minus 3 into 60 rupees. So at 60, what is the demand? If we find that out, it will be 320 minus 180. So that's going to be 140 units. Right? Then 140 is demanded, and out of that 140 demand, domestically supplied sugar is 40. Balance 100 units will be what? Imported. Balance 100 units will be imported. So demand is 120. So the gap between these two is what? The imported part is, that is 100 units. I hope that part also is clear to you. So if you get a question like this, mainly what you have to do is first see, okay, what's the equilibrium price? So in this case, that was 80. Equilibrium price was 80. Then see what's the international price. So here international price, world price was 60. So the producers can't sell at 80. They are forced now to sell at 60. So you take that price as the price going forward. 80 is now out because world price is lesser than the domestic equilibrium price. Right? So the producers are supposed to sell at 60 rupees only. Based on that, they'll sell only 40 units. If the domestic price was 35, then you can just disregard this world price. You just find out at 35 what are the equilibrium price. You find, at 35 whatever the equilibrium quantity is, or at 35 you just put the 35 at the supply equation. In the supply equation, whatever the quantity you get will be the amount supplied by domestic producers. It's so simple and logical also, if you ask me. Next question is, which of the following can be selected as a common determinant of price elasticity of demand and price elasticity of supply? Now, it goes like this, okay? If you take PED, normally in real world, if you take PED, you can find mainly two types in real world: elastic, the the greater than 1 PED, and the less than 1 PED. PES also same thing, right? Elastic and inelastic. Now, what will decide that a product has elastic demand or elastic supply, or inelastic demand or inelastic supply is, right? What will decide whether a product has greater than 1 or less than 1 PED, greater than 1 or less than 1 PES? There are some determinants. For example, if you take PED, one determinant that decides whether a product has elastic or inelastic demand is the nature of the product, whether it's essential or luxury, right? Essential or luxury will decide that. Likewise, there are other factors such as the percentage of income spent on the product, alternative uses a product has, right? The way a product is defined, whether broadly or in a very specific way. And those kind of things are the PED determinants. PES also has some determinants, such as, again, you come with, for example, you can look at whether there are, what about the storage availability, whether you can store the product or not, right? The factor mobility part, the substitutability part, substitution of how much of alternatives a producer has. All of that will decide the PES. But for both of them, one factor that is common is the time duration elapsed after the change in the price of production. So for PED also, if the price has changed now, and within a day, always for pretty much any product, demand will be inelastic because consumers can't change their demand so quickly. But if you take 2 years' time that has passed, now probably demand will be elastic. A lot of the consumers might have changed. Same goes to PES, supply also. In a day, when the price goes up, producers can't do anything. But if you take 3 years, producers might have even stopped the business and gone to something else, right? So that way, always the time duration elapsed after a change in the price of the product will decide whether the product has elastic demand or inelastic demand. If it's a very short time, generally demand and supply will be inelastic. If a long time has passed after the price change, probably demand and supply will be elastic by that time. So that's the answer for this question. Time duration that has passed after the price change. If it's just 1 or 2 days or very short time, demand and supply can't be changed quickly, inelastic. But if it's a very long time, if already a long time has passed after the price change, supply and demand will be elastic in nature. So that's about it, the 13th question. Right. So I believe you guys understood this whole thing clearly. Next is about, as you can see, when the income of a person increases by 20%, the income elasticity of demand for good X is minus 0.6. By what amount that demand for the product changed by this person from 1,400 units as a result of this situation. Okay, so they're saying when the income of the person increases by 20%, right? Consumer's income is going up by 20%. The income elasticity of demand is given as 0.6. Okay, by what amount that the demand for this product changed by this person from 1,400 units as a result of this situation. So it's pretty simple, this question is, if you have a look. So normally, let's say we are talking about income elasticity of demand, right? So we are talking about income elasticity of demand, right? So they are saying the income elasticity of demand coefficient is minus 0.6. That's what they are saying. And another thing they say is this minus 0.6 is a result, is the income elasticity of demand when there is a 20% increase in income elasticity of demand. Sorry, income of the consumer. As a result, at that time, we get minus 0.6 as the coefficient when the consumer's income increases by 20%. Right? That's what they're saying. So to do this question, all you need to know is the income elasticity of demand basic equation, right? The basic fundamental equation, or in another way, if I put it, the point in our income elasticity of demand equation, but here we should use the percentage one because we only know the income change in percentage. We don't know what's the initial income was, what's the new income is. We only know that income change has happened and that change is 20%. So you put that here, percentage change in income below, and on top, what do you have? Percentage change in quantity demanded. So percentage change in income, we know that is 20% income. We don't know the percentage change in quantity demanded, but what we know is whatever value you put here will get us this minus 0.6. That is for sure. So what do you now have to do? Simply make this percentage change in quantity demanded as the subject. So you'll have minus 0.6 into 20%, right? Into 20%. But since we have percentage in the numerator and the denominator, we can just cut them off, right? We can just simply cut them both off. Then what do you get? Minus 0.6 into 20 is how much? Minus 0.6 into 20, you get, I think, just multiply this and take it. You get a decrease of 12. Is that correct? A decrease of 12. So when that decrease of 12 happens, right? When that decrease of 12 happens, you need to first know, just to, I'm not sure whether you'll get it right or not. So I'm keeping the percentage for now. That way, I believe, the sum will make more sense to you. So let's bring here minus 0.6 into 20% equals percentage change in quantity demanded. Percentage change in quantity demanded. If that's the case now, what will you get? Minus 0.6 into 20% is how much? Minus 0.6 into 20%, you will get 0.12, right? So 0.12 minus 0.12 equals change in quantity demanded percentage. Change in quantity demanded percentage. That's what you get. So here they are saying, right, so minus 0.6 into 20% means minus 0.12, or if I write it in percentage, it will look like 12%, minus 12%. Since we are talking about, percentage thing, I'll write it that way, right? So percentage change in quantity demanded is simply 12%, minus 12%. Okay, then they are saying in the question, by what amount the demand for this product changed by this person from 1,400 units as a result of this situation. So originally demand was that 1,400 units. Originally, this is where demand was. From there, demand has gone to some quantity. We don't know that, right? Let's put quantity demanded 1. So that's the new quantity demanded. But we know for sure this difference, this increase in quantity demanded, right, or decrease in quantity demanded, whatever, is in percentage minus 12%. The change from 1,400 units to whatever quantity you have at this QD1 point, the change is minus 12%. So all you have to do now is you take the 1,400 units and find out of 1,400, how much is minus 12%. You just have to find that out. You'll get by what number of units, by what number of units the demand has changed. So 1400 into 12%, if you find, you'll get 168. Since we have a minus here, I'm going to put minus 168. So when this consumer's income increased, what has happened is demand of the consumer has dropped. Dropped by how much? Minus 168 units. Right? So that's pretty much the answer, decreased by 168 units. So what did we do here? Simply put, we took, okay, income elasticity of demand. The basic equation was percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change in income. This is income elasticity of demand. And we know the percentage change in income was 20% plus income elasticity of demand value is minus 0.6. What we didn't know is what's the percentage change in quantity demanded, right? We didn't know that. Now to find that, what did we do? We made this percentage change in quantity demanded as the subject. That way we ended up with percentage change in quantity demanded equals minus 0.6 into 20%. That got us that percentage change in quantity demanded is 12%. We got this, right? We got this. Then what did we do? Okay, we know the percentage change in quantity demanded is 12% minus, okay? And that we know the original quantity demanded was 1400. So from 1400, how much is minus 12%? That's what we found. That happens to be simply, what did we do? We took the quantity demanded originally, which is 1400, multiplied it with minus 12%, right? That meant quantity has changed by minus 168 units. The answer is the fourth one. That's how you do this question. Very basic, very simple. The only thing is that percentage thing, when you shift this 20% to this, to the other side, when you get the value, you have to be very careful not to miss that percentage sign. If you miss it, it will be a problem, right? It will be a big problem. That's the only thing I want you guys to be very, very careful with. Next, suppose the demand for petrol is very inelastic and the supply is very elastic, and excise tax on petrol will be borne more by whom? Heavily by buyers, heavily by sellers, or will it be shared equally by one another, or will it be entirely borne by the taxpayers? Right, taxpayers in the sense it can be the buyers or the sellers. In this case, it's an excise tax, no? Right. So the question is pretty much about tax incidence. Who will bear most of the share, or will they be bearing it equally, or will only one party bear it, or how that works? That's the question. So tax incidence, that's what it is. Whenever tax is charged, out of these, we have two parties in the market, buyer and seller. Who bears what portion of the tax? That is the concept of tax incidence. And that is decided by two things. One is price elasticity of demand, and then price elasticity of supply. Those are the two things that will decide tax incidence. It will decide how much of a share producer gets, how much of a share consumer gets. Now, that you can find out simply by putting the situation that is given in the question in a graph, right? You can actually find the answer for this question by doing that. Let me take you through that process. And it goes like this, okay? So, first of all, Let me arrange it. Okay. Let me draw the demand curve exactly like what the question says. It's very elastic. That means demand curve has to be elastic, something like this. Supply is very, demand is very inelastic. Okay. So I have made sure we have a very steep demand curve. Supply, they are saying, is very elastic now. That means it can be a flatter curve, but you have to make sure it starts from the price axis, something like this. So price, 0, quantity, right? And then now remember excise tax, that's what's given in the question. So generally excise tax is charged, paid by the producers. Okay. So remember this one thing. Whenever excise tax is put, right, in the market, like I said, it's put on the producer. So if the initial market equilibrium is like this, right, let's say the equilibrium price is here, that's the first equilibrium, and the quantity is here. That's the case, first equilibrium. Then the tax is being put now, and like we said, it's excise tax. So excise tax generally is put on the, what do you call, producer. So it's going to affect the supply much, right? Actually, it's going to affect the supply directly. So when we do that, you see the supply curve is shifting to the left. As a result, you have a new supply curve, right? You have a new supply curve. Supply curve has shifted to the left because of the excise tax being charged. So it's on the producer. And you have a new equilibrium now. You have a new equilibrium now. And as you can see, generally, the tax amount that is charged can be found simply by you tracking yourself, your route from the new equilibrium point. From there, you have to come to the old supply curve. From the new equilibrium point, you come to the old supply curve. So you see the vertical gap between two supply curves when a tax is charged, the curve will shift parallelly, and the vertical gap between two supply curves will be equal to the tax amount charged. So this blue line exactly shows us how much tax is being charged, the amount of tax that's being charged. And if you take that tax amount now, right, and see that tax amount actually is paid, or the burden of the tax is actually paid by two parties, right? The burden of the tax is actually paid by two parties. For example, if I say the original equilibrium price is 20 rupees, let me write it in orange. Original equilibrium price is 20 rupees, and the tax amount that is charged is 10 rupees. Right, the tax amount charged is 10 rupees. Now, this gap, the blue line, that actually is equal to 10 rupees. And out of this whole 10 rupees, you see, a major part is above the 20 rupee line. That means this area is actually the increase in the price. Right, that area is actually increase in the price. So you have gone from 20 and up. So that's the increase in the price. So let's say the new equilibrium price is 28 rupees. So if the new equilibrium price is 28, you see earlier consumers were paying 20, now they are paying 28. Right? Earlier consumers were paying 20, now they are paying 28. And from 28, if you deduct 10 rupees, you get the producer's price. That is this price, 18. 28 minus 10 is 18. So producers, if you have a look, earlier they were getting 20. Now, even though they are selling for 28 rupees, 10 rupees goes to the government. So producers are getting now 18 only. So this box actually shows the producer's share, producer's burden. So if you take the whole tax burden, that is this whole box, 10 rupees into the equilibrium quantity after tax, that whole box, if you take, out of that, who takes majority of the share? This part, consumers. Why? Because majority of the tax amount has been added to the price of the product. That's why price of the product is now at 28 rupees. Earlier it was 20, tax is only 10. Equilibrium price went up by 8 rupees. That means producers have passed on, out of the 10 rupee tax, producers have passed on most of the burden to the consumers, and they have taken only a smaller 2 rupee portion for themselves. That has happened. So remember, to find out who bears most of the tax, you have to simply take this original equilibrium point, the initial equilibrium point, as like your guiding line, right? As like your guiding line. Take that first. After taking that, find out what is the tax amount and try to show it in the curve itself, in the graph itself. And that is this area, right? That area. So the vertical gap between the new and the old supply curve. And if you look at this supply, the tax amount, see which part is above the black line and which part is below the black line. So the part that's above the black line, remember, is the consumer's burden of tax. And the part that is below the tax line, the part that is below the tax line is always the producer's burden of tax. And which part is bigger now? Consumer's burden. So you say more heavily by buyers. Buyers are paying most of the part of the tax, whereas producers are paying some part of the tax, but a very, very small part only. So that's about that question. Right? So for this question, simply, you don't even have to actually draw this graph and all to find it, but the graph method always helps you. You have to make sure this demand curve has to reflect the elasticity of that product's demand. If it's very inelastic, then the supply curve has to be very steep. And if the demand is very elastic, if the demand is very inelastic, the supply curve has to be very steep. If the supply is very elastic, the supply curve has to be, it has to start and come through the price axis. And generally, it will be a relatively flatter curve also. You have to make sure you draw it that way. Once you have done that, you have to just shift the supply curve like I have done, and then find out what's the tax amount and show it in the graph by tracking yourself from the new equilibrium point towards the old supply curve. After that, like I said, look at the old original equilibrium price and see out of tax, which part, which out of the, original tax, if you take the original tax line and compare it with the original equilibrium price and compare it with the tax amount, whatever part is above that original equilibrium price is the consumer's burden. Whatever that is below is the producer's burden. So that way you can find it. If not, you can just sit and think. When supply is very elastic, producers have more control over the product. When demand is very inelastic, what will happen? Consumers don't have much control over the product and their demand also. Like petrol, which is very inelastic in nature when it comes to demand, even if the price goes up in a very huge way, consumers will still keep on buying. But producers, they can store the product for a very long time. So producers don't care whether the price goes up or comes down, right? What will happen? They can control. When the price goes up, they can decide to sell a whole lot more of petrol. If the price goes down, they will just stop selling the product, wait until the price comes back to the top. Then they'll start selling again. So in that case, what's going to happen is when tax is put on this particular producer who has more control over their production and supply, they don't have to bear majority of that tax amount by themselves. So what do? They are like, now the price is 20. Government has put a 10 rupee tax on me. So I don't have to bear most of it. What I'll do is I'll increase the price and pass over the burden to the consumers. By how much? Since consumers have very inelastic demand, even though I increase the price in a very huge way, demand won't drop by much. So I'll pass over around 80% in this case of the tax amount to the consumer by increasing the price and making the price 28. Even though I have increased the price by 8 rupees, from 20, I have increased the price by 8 rupees. That is about 40% increase in the price. Consumers will still buy almost the same quantity. You see, a very small increase, decrease in demand only. For such a huge increase in price, only a small decrease in demand. So producers are like, okay, consumers will anyway buy. So I'll pass over majority of the burden to the consumers and bear a very small amount of the tax by myself as the producer. That's what has happened. For cigarettes also same thing happens, because cigarettes again, demand is very inelastic. So when tax is put on the producer, what the producer will do is they'll increase the price by a huge amount. So that tax is now actually borne by the consumer mostly, because when the price goes up, consumers still buy the same quantity. As a result, what will happen? Producer will now be able to sell the product at a higher price, and out of that higher price, they'll settle off majority of the tax amount. A smaller portion maybe the producers will bear for themselves. So that's how this thing works. Okay, I hope you understood this. If you don't, if you still have doubts, go back to the tax incidence part in chapter 3 and go through the whole thing again. But simply to understand this, to identify the answers, you have to just roughly draw a graph like I have shown here, reflecting the nature of the elasticity of demand and supply, and then just hit the curve and make sure you know that whatever part you see, whatever increase in price you see due to tax is the consumer's burden of tax. Whatever decrease in the producer's price you see due to tax is the producer's burden. Here you can see consumers, the increase in price is actually equal to 80% of the tax amount, and the decrease in producer's price is just 2 rupees. That is like 20% of the tax amount. So consumers bear most of the tax. And with that question, I'm going to end this video. The rest of the 10 questions from question 16 to question 25, I will discuss. I'll explain them in another video. So that will be up next. So for now, that's it. See you all in the next video. Have a great day ahead.